I'm not a geographer, but
it's very specific.
I actually am a geographer.
What?
Yeah. That's my original degree was in geography.
You're kidding. This is Champaign is Also a Band podcast. One songwriter, one song. I'm Sven, your host for a journey into the music of Champaign-Urbana. Recorded in the Blue Box studio with a songwriter from the Champaign-Urbana music scene, past or present. Champaign is Also a Band podcast is a member of the Champaign Showers Podcast Network. Welcome to Champaign is Also a Band podcast. This is Sven. Today, I'm going to be talking with an artist that you may know from such bands as Devildogs, Little Nathan Jr., jigGsaw, Johnnyork, Withershins, and is currently playing in a band called Sunwise. Neil Yeager. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
All right. So today, we're going to be listening to the song Sophie off of the album Something Happened Here Once by the band Sunwise. So let's, without further ado, as I like to say, let's listen to the song. welcome back. So, I guess as my favorite question of all time, for my first question is, so did the words come first, or was it the bass line that we hear at the beginning, or was there something that just started this off?
As the writing process, these things both kind of happen independently about the same time. I wasn't writing these things to be together, but then later they just blended in, and it worked out pretty good. So like the majority of the lines are actually just a quote from Sophie Scholl. She was part of the White Rose. She's kind of known as the woman to defy Hitler or stand up to Hitler.
Yeah. I did not catch that correlation, but that totally it makes so much more sense. I think the lines, it's such a fine sunny day and I have to go, which is what the quote that's attributed to her as she went to the gallows. Which right. And then the front part of the lyrics is all about the events that led up to her being caught, or her team being caught. Yeah, and it keeps kind of it's like an action. All of the lines start with kind of an action of like we're moving forward, but yet it keeps going back to the falling down.
Yeah,
falling down. As Sophie, as part of the White Rose, was that something that was particularly something that you've studied in the past, or just has always spoken to you?
All right, so it's actually really time specific. Like when I was writing this, our political landscape is very divisive and problematic, if you ask me. But right. Shortly before I sat down to approach this, there was the story about it was a guy that got stabbed in the neck on a bus, I think, in Portland or Seattle, and he was defending, I think, a Muslim lady that was on a bus that was getting berated by some white angry man, and somebody on the bus stood up to him, got stabbed in the neck and died. And so like that story is just like stuck with me, like, because what I'm worried about in my own personal life is having the courage to stand up, because the easy thing to do on that bus is to look the other way and sit down and don't say anything. The hard thing to do is to stand up and be like, hey, this is not okay. And knowing the consequences that people that stand up face, like Sophie went to the gallows. They didn't want to kill her. Like all the historical records say, like, you don't have to die here today. Like we will let you go. Just, do the right thing here and save your life. And she wouldn't do it because she was standing up for what she believed in. So that was my mindset at the time of sort of approaching writing.
I feel like we're going to have to return to the thought of the lyrics and how that was coming together. So the one thing that kind of, I'm even going to back up a little bit further, is this whole album, if you listen to it from beginning to end, or EP, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it technically is an EP. I'm not an expert on these things.
Yeah, it's like the magic number is 6. If it's above 6, then it becomes an album. And I say this all the time. It's like, oh, is it an EP? Is it an album? Is it? But I noticed that I said, I'm just going to listen. I'm going to focus on the song Sophie, but I'm going to listen to the whole thing as the whole, as I was thinking about analyzing this. And I have to say, the way that this was done, that unless you're paying attention, sometimes it just jumps into the next track, and you everything kind of flows together, and in a way that almost helps it define it as an album, is that it's this cohesive line. It's not a bunch of singles thrown together to make an EP. And I guess I'm just kind of saying I appreciate it when even a shorter length release is out there that has a cohesive feel to it. I think that's remarkable. But I was curious about that lilting bass line at the beginning, where it's just the single bass line. What I'm curious is, did you directly write that bass line, or was there chords already in place and then you wrote the bass line based on the chords? Because the rhythm that you're using in there, I just thought, it doesn't hit me as like you're landing right on the on the beat specifically to have it be a standalone thing. But when you use it as a standalone in the beginning, you're like, you don't necessarily wrap your head around a specific rhythm, but when it all comes together with all the parts, it has that sense. It feels like it's all a song where it just kind of starts with something, and then it makes more and more sense as the parts are added, and it fills out. Is that maybe something that was intentional, or that's just my interpretation?
I wish it was intentional. So initially, I wrote everything out on guitar, and in my mind, I felt like that line was going to be a guitar line, just sort of like the guitar melody that sets the stage.
Yeah.
When we got into the room together, the other guys kind of were like, this might make more sense as the bass line, because I just wanted to play like open notes and ring out like maybe a large distorted chord through the line to just sort of set that sort of more ominous overtone, right? It completely changed, and that's sort of the nature of when the band gets together. It's elastic, I had the idea, I was like, this is the idea, and so when it became the bass line, it just morphed into that what it is now. And then but the cool thing is that it allowed the guitars to kind of freeform around it, because it's not standard, and I think you mentioned about it's not played directly on the beat, or it's not a simple 4/4 progression, right? It's a little more elastic, a little more loose, so which became very difficult for the drummer, the repetitive nature of it, and then the way the lyrics sort of formed in around it, it makes a cohesive thing. The whole entry part is just like a bridge to get to the end. It's just like a big giant placeholder to form the outro, essentially. If I'm writing something, I don't want to be constricted by a verse chorus verse progression, or most of the time what I like to do is have part 1, part 2, and then call it out. If it starts to get too formulaic, which is fine if other people are writing, if we're in a band together and you're like, this is the song, it does this verse, and then we play the chorus, and then that's cool, I'm fine with that. But if I'm writing it, I want it to be more not restricted to structure.
Right. It's interesting to me when you say that you originally wanted it to be a guitar riff, because then it explains why there's, not that bass players don't bend notes, but when you're playing it and bending the note a little bit, I'm that's very guitaric.
Right, for sure.
Another word that I'm making up. Yeah, it's very guitaric.
It'll be in Webster's soon.
That makes so much more sense. It being these low notes, I think, lends this kind of mystery of where it's going to go. Modally, it feels kind of a minor, but then when the guitar chords fill in above it, it changes the interpretation of how those chords are going above it. It's fascinating now for me to understand that this is in relation to the White Rose and Sophie, and about resistance, because really, to an extent, it starts off with just one person, but it has to be that one person inspires many, and then it develops into a movement. Within the context, I think it's interesting that you're building this bass line, and then just little chimes, should I say, the chimes of, you could say, of the cymbals on the drums, and then a natural harmonic on the guitar that's doing the chime sound, and it's just like these little parts. As I'm doing this with my hands that no one can see,
that makes for great radio.
These little tiny parts that just kind of build, and I always feel like sometimes I can go with a full-on interpretation about things, and then completely have to do a reversal of what. Not that I had a solid idea this time, but it's just interesting to me to know that the lyrics and the intention was about rising up and resisting, and in some ways even just being that one person that stands up even when everyone else may not.
Well, that's one of the most inspiring things to me about Sophie, is that here we are kind of talking about her. But, to me, this song is really about fear of, and not being willing to go that far, not be willing, because like I'll have my beliefs, I think everyone has their beliefs, but in the moment, would I be willing to risk things to stand up for my beliefs? And that's my biggest fear, I think.
Yeah, especially when we look at this political climate and knowing that our president, by example, has given people that discriminate permission to behave in that manner. I think that was something that was simmering below, but somehow it's been, what's the word, condoned.
Yeah, I mean, there's a long, complicated history. I would argue that the current administration's intentions are intentional. I don't think that it's an accident. Some people might disagree with that or whatever, that's fine, but it doesn't change the fact that on the ground, tensions are higher than probably ever. That's the thing that becomes a problem then, because when you're out there and you have to sort of deal with these things face to face, what will we do? It consumes a portion of my day. And I think about being able to have the courage to call people out for their bullshit. That's something that I haven't been willing to do when I was younger. And as the climate gets more complicated and more intense, I feel like we're all, as a society, going to have to deal with this on a more personal, daily level. It's tough. It's hard because, as I mentioned earlier, the easy thing to do is to go home and complain about it. And, some asshole totally was being a dick today, and then I went home and I complained to my wife about it.
Right. Yeah.
Where the right thing to do would be like, hey, what the fuck's your problem?
Yeah.
But that opens up a can of worms then.
We've been trained to be a polite society, and
there's a thing. It's a Midwest nice, right?
Yeah. Well, the thing is that, in a certain way, the understanding that we're supposed to be nice should also couple with the social contract of we almost have to enforce the nice too. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Is that we don't see that other side of the coin when it's like we're supposed to be polite, we're supposed to be nice, we're supposed to keep the peace. But in that sense, it also means that we have to enforce the nice. Enforce the peace. And
the complication is that the other side isn't playing by that rule. And not the other side in terms of liberal or conservative. I'm just talking about, sort of oppression versus the oppressed. It's kind of crazy because, like, generally speaking, I'm not like a politically active person or, these aren't concepts that I would normally hang out and talk about. When I'm in the bands, this is like one funnest thing I do. It's not necessarily like a reflection of an agenda that I'm trying to push out. So it's kind of hard for me to talk about these things kind of like this.
To give a life to these words and give a life to your music and get it out there and share it with other people, I think there is a validation there in terms of that. Maybe no matter how small, every little bit counts, right? Where we have to be able to share that part, that feeling, that sentiment that it's not okay, you know? And I really appreciate that this song has that depth to it. And I did, and it makes me happy when a song has a depth to it that I didn't necessarily realize. And I think that's part of why I love this, doing this podcast, is because it's like, oh shit, I had no idea. When this was first created, you had done this on the guitar, and you had the words, and they kind of, when did those two meet finally?
It's kind of weird. It was just like an afternoon where I was trying to square peg round hole this, There was actually a considerable volume of words that were like shaved down. So like I spent a lot of time crafting a narrative that could be simply delivered. So like, there'd be like a really long line and I'd be like, you could say this line in 3 words,
right,
and still capture the essence. And part of that was intentional because of fear for myself of never having taken to the mic before in a band setting, at least not formally. So I wanted to make sure that the conciseness was easy for me to remember and pull together and deliver in a way that I felt comfortable with. So there was a lot of intentional crafting. In terms of the actual creative process, like everything sort of happened in one take. I've never experienced that before. I was just recording things as I was trying to like craft this thing and playing it back, listening to it and trying to figure out. And then like the time I hit record, that was the take. That was the process that I was going to use to try to present it to the band, to be like, this is what I think. To capture it like at once was unexpected and fortuitous, but like I don't know where the inspiration really came from. It was not necessarily planned or intentional. It just like appeared, and I think that's kind of wonderful.
How did Sunwise get formed? You've got the band members from Sunwise from all over Illinois, but mainly kind of focused in Joliet, Illinois. How did that come together? And
Withershins, so Vaudvileins is our buddies from up in Chicago, Joliet, and we played a lot with them. And so after shows, you would be hanging out with guys and drinking beers and chatting. And music for me has always been like a social thing. It's something I do as a hobby with my free time for enjoyment specifically. And so like I found these guys that I really got along with well, shared a long list of similar bands that we liked, and Withershins was dying essentially. Everyone was moving away, and I didn't, with Champaign's a wonderful town and a great music scene, but as you get older, it becomes a little bit more difficult to find musicians that are like-minded, that want to do the similar things. And so I was casting a wider net and just found these guys that really shared a base, a core band similarities, and that's not exactly an easy thing to find. So I really appreciate what those guys bring in, and one of them has a van, so that's real important.
I get that. So. Yes. Unless you're a quartet of kazoos, you need a van.
You need a van.
Yeah. Champaign is Also a Band podcast is proud to support Exile on Main Street. Exile on Main Street, located in the old train station building at 100 North Chestnut Street in downtown Champaign, has been helping to build record collections since 2004. Carrying a wide array of new and used LPs, CDs, and video games. Exile on Main Street has something for just about any music enthusiast and old-school gaming devotee. Exile also hosts regular free live music shows on its stage, so be sure to check out their Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages for the up-to-date details on the next upcoming event. Open 7 days a week, they can be reached by phone at 217-398-MAIN. That's 217-398-6246. So did you grow up here in the Champaign-Urbana?
No. I'm from the south of Chicago. In between Chicago and Kankakee was my...
all right. So what brought you to Champaign-Urbana?
A band, oddly enough.
And that was the...
Devildogs.
Devildogs.
Yeah, we were in like an alt-country kind of band. Yeah. It was good. We, when we moved in together, our plan was to play a lot of shows, and we mainly just drank beer and hung out, which was not a bad time.
So how long ago was that?
That was 1999.
That's when I moved to
Actually, maybe 1998. Maybe it was right around there. Yeah.
That also means that you've seen some of the metamorphosis of the Champaign-Urbana music scene.
For sure.
I mean, back then, what were your favorite venues to play at?
The Canopy was amazing for they were bringing regional and sometimes national acts through. We played the IDF. I don't think they're still doing shows or anything.
I'm not familiar with the IDF.
IDF was something kind of, and Illinois Disciples Foundation. I think it was, I'm not exactly sure what it was. It was just sort of probably comparable to like the IMC, it had a large space with a PA and you could get in there and play shows. There was no bar or anything like that. And there was no bringing in booze or anything. It was just a show space. I think right around somewhere around there is when the Iron Post started up.
Why do I feel like the Iron Post has been there forever? But maybe they have. I mean,
I don't
20 years is a long time.
Yeah,
but...
I think 99 2000 is when the Iron Post started up, somewhere around there.
No way.
So that was pretty cool. The HighDive was open, but they weren't doing any band stuff as far as I can recall.
Yeah, they were at that point. They were just a bar.
Yeah,
That's
like
what it
downtown
felt like.
Champaign in 99 2000 around there wasn't what it became later.
Because it was like the Brass Rail, Esquire,
yeah, those were
Jupiter's,
places, but
and
like
then
that was
HighDive.
before like before so Brass Rail was there for sure. I don't ever recall going there. Esquire was still the single bar.
Right.
So it was still a great place to get some grub, but yeah, I think Mike and Molly's was doing stuff, but I don't ever recall going there. There was was the Courtyard, so that would have been the show space for the U of I.
Oh,
There's,
yeah.
Courtyard something. I don't remember that, but yeah. I know we played there. The Union. Yeah. The Union Courtyard maybe.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun. As a band, we'd moved here playing a style maybe not conducive to getting gigs in town. Especially, like Hum was still pretty active, sort of that loud rock and roll type space rock sound. I'm sure would have gotten us some more gigs, but...
Well, and it wasn't like the Rose Bowl was as much of a music venue.
If it was a thing at all, I don't remember it being so.
I mean, it's been around, but it's always been a bar, maybe not always
like,
a music venue.
As musicians at that point, we were like really into Wilco and like the Jayhawks and like Willie Nelson, like Tom Petty. Those were the types of things that we wanted to emulate.
I kind of want to hear that. Do you have anything?
No. That band has been lost to the. Back then, getting the studio time would have been obscene.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't like it is now, where you can just put it on your phone and send it to everyone.
Is there a favorite venue that you've played at?
Oh well, Mike and Molly's was like home for Withershins.
Yeah.
I
think that's the first time that I saw Withershins was at the beer garden in Mike and Molly's.
The beer garden in the summer. Is there anything really better than to me, those memories? Some of the best times I've ever had. It's hard to really quantify. I really enjoyed the Cowboy Monkey when it had its stage. That was a pretty cool venue. A lot of the places around town were excellent. When the HighDive, and then I forget what they called it after the HighDive.
The Accord.
Yeah, the Accord. I mean, that was so much fun. And honestly, I think the best Withershins ever sounded was on that stage with Bob running the sound.
Yeah.
What an amazing guy. Just his grasp of our sound couldn't be understated. He really dialed us in. What
was the best venue to attend as an audience member or whatever?
As an audience member, depending on... if we're talking like Champaign, I had some just amazing times at the HighDive Accord. Some of those shows will be hard to forget. Shiner, seeing Appleseed Cast there, and even seeing like Life and Times at Cowboy. Some of those shows were just like amazing. That the system for that room was pretty good. So depending on who was tweaking the knobs,
I kind of feel like you would have been, at least in the DIY scene. It was like the Velvet Elvis and that kind of thing. I saw Withershins there.
Yeah, me too. The Velvet Elvis as a thing was just astoundingly amazing. It was like it was hard to really even comprehend how cool that was.
Yeah, how does one get a space that big? In my mind, other than like the IMC, it is one of the few above ground locations that are DIY. I keep forgetting how privileged we were to have that DIY venue at the time. Yeah, because it you didn't have to duck down for anything.
No, it was amazing. You could play frisbee up there. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah,
but like, I saw like Appleseed there and Hum.
I still don't know how. Knowing Matt Talbot now, I understand how that's possible.
For sure.
But at the time, I was like, "Holy shit! How did they get home?"
I have no idea.
Yeah,
but I don't know how those conversations went about. All I know was like they told me it was going to happen, and don't tell anybody.
Well, it's like, hey, I've got this idea. Do you mind dragging your shit up like a flight of stairs?
3. And I mean, we were on the 3rd floor.
That's right.
I will have the Withershins did a hefty amount of lifting of gear for Hum.
Okay.
We did everything we could to accommodate them at every level.
And
they were super cool about it. Like, they weren't rock stars at all.
No.
But we were like, please let us help you.
Right. But I mean, at that time, I didn't have the understanding of how cool they were.
Yeah, I can see that. I didn't
other
either.
than just as a band being cool, but also as human beings being cool. Sometimes it just blows my mind what this scene can accomplish if it really wants to. So how do you feel about it seemed like most of Champaign, downtown Champaign, has kind of shut down. For the longest time, they were the venue location.
But I mean, it's hard to think about now, just given the landscape of live music. But thinking back to some of my favorite nights were like catching an early show at the HighDive, then going to Cowboy, and then closing it up at Mike and Molly's. Or there was a night where I think Skirvine was playing the Brass Rail, and Life and Times is playing at the Cowboy, and then you're popping in at Mike and Molly's to see whoever's there. It was not uncommon to have 2 or 3 good shows conflicting, and then if you have the cash, you're probably going to them,
right?
Yeah, I'll catch this band the next time because they'll play more in town here, but we got to see these guys because they don't play that much,
right? Well, and the idea too is when you say that you have cash, I mean, to be honest, most covers are about the price of a beer.
For sure.
I mean, to be honest. And
well, that's
I feel like yeah. But I mean, you have 5 beers instead of 6.
But at the same time, you're looking at it I've already paid cover at Mike and Molly's. Right?
True.
We could just hang out here and watch these 3 good bands, or we can spend an extra $5. And I don't know what covers go for nowadays because I don't get out as much. But
I mean, the covers have grown about as quickly as the minimum wage. How about let's just say that?
But see, also too, cover isn't necessarily a major obstacle for me nowadays.
Right.
So I've grown up a little bit, but I also don't get out as much. So, back then, 10, 12 years ago, right? Paying 3 different covers at a night would have been an obstacle. And I was probably only going to drink 4 beers anyway. But now I've paid 3 covers and I'm only having 2 beers.
Right. I get
and
that.
I couldn't see all 12 bands anyway.
Since you've seen it from kind of that earlier age, the music scene, going back 20 years, so to speak.
Yeah, for sure.
Is there anything that you think would be that you kind of miss, or that, I mean, other than Mike and Molly's not being there, but is there something that you thought really worked about the Champaign-Urbana music scene that doesn't seem evident now? And granted, you've stepped away from the scene a little bit by not being in Champaign-Urbana, but is there something that seems readily apparent that it's just not that, it doesn't feel the same anymore? Or
I tried to make this argument with my friend Calvin from Sewing Needle that kids just aren't going to shows like they used to, And he was like, no, that's just not true. They're not going to the shows you're going to, which is probably a fair assessment because, I'm old and I'm going to, when I go to a show, it's because there's an old band playing music from the 90s or the aughts that I want to see. I want to see some twinkly guitars, and they got 14 different distortions on stage, so that's my jam. But he was telling me that the kids are just going to different shows, and it's more, there's always a thriving scene. It's just you might not be aware of it. I think that there's an ebb and flow just generally within music industry. There definitely seems to be within the bar industry a push away from any live music. Whether or not that will remain, it's hard to really say. I imagine it'll take some sort of change in music that draws people, because the bars are really just interested in their bottom line.
Right.
If it puts people in the seats or the in the place that buy beer, they will put bands in there. Obviously, they've made the calculation that they don't need that aspect of their business right now, especially in downtown Champaign.
Right.
Urbana looks to be like a pretty vibrant scene.
Yes.
But I wonder how much of that is like picking up the market that's available, right? Because there's a definite lack of that in Champaign. So maybe they've evaluated that and said like, well, we can pick up this draw, right? Iron Post, Blackbird, Rose Bowl, I like that, and I
25 o'clock, Sip Yard.
Yeah,
I mean,
wonderful.
Yeah, all these things that just, where did that come from?
Right.
And IMC, of course, on top
absolutely.
of that.
I honestly feel a little bad. If you like going to shows, don't start grad school while still doing your full-time job.
Right.
And having kids. Like, it's difficult, I don't get to near as many shows as I do. And then with my band being up in Joliet, I do spend a lot of my spare time up that way.
Right.
So I've gone to some shows, but they just haven't been local, Right. And I feel terrible about that. It hurts, but I try to catch Take Care every time they play.
Yeah.
Moats, I absolutely love Moats. So when they play, I try to make a strong effort to go see them.
That kind of wraps into a little thing when you mentioned Take Care. You're going to be playing, Withershins is going to be reuniting for a show on November 15th at the Brass Rail, and it's going to be with the Vaudvileins from Chicago, Sisser from St. Louis,
yes,
and Take Care from Champaign-Urbana.
I believe that they're all from Danville. So let's just
and now it's like Withershins from everywhere.
Yeah, no, we're a national organization.
It's true.
Coast to coast.
At least a Midwest conglomerate. Maybe?
No, I mean
because they have
Colin's in DC essentially, and Bryce is in Salt Lake, which is pretty close to the Pacific. I'm pretty sure. I'm not a geographer, but
it's very specific.
I actually am a geographer.
What?
Yeah, that's my original degree was in geography.
You're kidding.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's pretty much...
That's... I know.
Google made that pretty useful.
It's got turns. Excellent.
Yeah.
It's good to know. So everybody needs to go out and catch this show. I feel like you're not going to get to see Withershins very often.
No.
And to be completely overdramatic, I'm going to say this is the last time anyone will ever be able to see Withershins. Yeah. Ever. Get out there. Do that thing. Don't miss it.
And we should be pretty good because we're not going to practice. But we'll have one show under our belt already by the time we play.
Oh, okay.
So I think that's it'll definitely be better the second night over the first night. But if you're listening from St. Louis, you should go to that show too because it's going to be a bit of a train wreck. But it'll be an amazing train wreck that you can't turn away from.
So where are you playing? So on the 14th?
The day before the...
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's the 14th, that's the 14th. Then we're playing Schlafly Tap.
That's right. I did Schlafly.
Yeah, I don't know how to say it, but I know how to drink it.
Sugarfluffly? Okay. That would be... Oh.
Yeah, come on down. It'll be fun.
I'm getting ideas.
Yeah.
Champaign is Also a Band podcast is proud to support Jubilee Cafe. Jubilee Cafe is a free weekly meal program at Community United Church of Christ, 805 South 6th Street in Champaign, Illinois. Jubilee Cafe serves a home-cooked meal from 5 to 6:30 each Monday. Their mission is to feed hungry people by cooking healthy, delicious meals and by serving their guests restaurant-style with servers waiting on tables. Jubilee Cafe is open to anyone who cares to eat with them. Because food insecurity among students is so high, they serve students as well as others in and around the Champaign-Urbana community who struggle with hunger. Meals are free to all and will be served each Monday evening. Located in the accessible lower level of the building at 6th and Daniel Streets in Champaign. For more information on the meal or how to volunteer, go to the Jubilee Cafe CUCC Facebook page or email them at jubilee.cafe@community-ucc.org. That's jubilee.cafe@community-ucc.org. Neil,
That's me.
that is you. What is your favorite non-musical thing?
So that's very good question.
You can do a list. That's fine too. We can
I have a
deep dive.
got a little bit of a biography to reveal, but so outside of music, I have always put family first above pretty much everything. So that's probably the most important aspect of my life. You know, if you get away from family and music, I'm really passionate about beer. It's probably my second favorite hobby. I like to brewery tour and sample different beers. I like to try new beers as a hobby. Yeah. But it's cool because as you know, as we've got all these empties here, Dank Meme from Triptych is my favorite brewery and my favorite beer. It's very fortunate as a beer connoisseur to have your favorite beer being right in your backyard.
I'd have to agree that Dank Meme is probably one of my favorite Triptych, but I also like their Hefeweizen.
No, their Hefe is good.
Always have a Dank Meme, but I also always have whatever the newest. A Wizard is Never Late is probably really good.
Yeah. Wake Up Neo is probably one of my favorites.
But they haven't done that in a while.
They haven't done it in a while. I don't know what they're doing over there. They don't listen to me, but...
Well, you know.
I got some
Did you come in with your bass when you did that? Were you like...
There was a really great moment in Withershins history where I messaged Triptych and I was like, hey, can we do a listening party of our new record when Mount Fuji came out?
Yes.
So we did a video for
Aquamarine, yeah.
We watched the video and then we listened to Mount Fuji in its entirety when the pressing came out at Triptych, and we drank beer and played cards and hung out. It was a really cool combination of two of my favorite things. Right?
I think that's such a great album, and I think it was, if you want to look at it as a swan song, it was definitely like a good it was a good way to go out. Although I still like Silver Cities a hell of a lot, and I wish Ariel could be on vinyl, and then I would have all of it on vinyl. But
it may happen one day. We'll see. I don't know.
Ooh.
There's been talk. It's hard though because it's such a financial commitment, and it's
true.
And essentially it's lighting money on fire, you know. I want a copy of it for my record collection, you know.
Sometimes isn't it just enough to have the desire to want something to exist? So you know what I mean?
That's the thing. There's at least 10 people that want copies of that, right? So when you
unless they're willing to pay $300 each. Yeah. Oh, I get it.
But there's also other considerations because we really recorded that. Aaron McAllister did a wonderful job, but we recorded it for basically MP3. So someone would have to track down the originals and look at that for remastering and then pressing, and then, you know, like how much money would you really want to light on fire? No one's won the lottery yet, you know.
True.
I'm working on it, but but it's something that it's on my list of things to accomplish.
Yeah.
So as long as I'm still breathing, it's a potential thing to happen.
I feel like it's an it's an under-recognized album. You know, I feel like there were so many great things. I mean, Prologue is probably one of my favorite Withershins songs.
Mine too.
Like just it's digga.
I was as we progressed and moved on, and that song got cut from the set, it was always a problem for me. Like in terms of just sort of bass composition, that was one of my most proudest achievements, and sort of like the space that I allowed. You know, there's quiet parts, loud parts, and there's just Well, and that song is all like anticipation, for sure. You know, well, and it's also, you know, kind of the drumline march kind of. Colin really.
Oh my God,
lightning in a bottle.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, anyway, I mentioned on the episode, I think that was episode 8. There's that's one of the songs I would put on like the top, like up in there.
It was always one of my favorites.
Did we just completely diverge from like your favorite things? So
no, I mean
definitely beer.
Yeah, beer. But I mean, I guess we did, because if you're making a non-musical statement, but like it's hard for me to unwrap that, because I have my family that I support and take care of and work together with, with my wife and like all that. Yeah. And then outside of that, my two favorite things are drinking beer and playing rock shows and hanging out with the band. So like, that's pretty much my whole life right there, is those three things.
Thank you so much for coming out to the Blue Box Studio and recording this episode with me and talking about your song Sophie off of the album Something Happened Here Once by Sunwise, and telling me about your experience earlier on with the Champaign-Urbana music scene and your non-musical favorite thing, which we most certainly did enjoy thoroughly and may enjoy even more after this is over. But I really, really appreciate you coming out and telling me all about your song, Sophie.
It's been a pleasure.
Excellent.
Thank you for listening to Champaign is Also a Band podcast. This is Neil Yeager reminding you, great music is out there. Go find it where you live.
You almost have an NPR voice. It's so good.
Studio, South Beaker, on the inside.
Thank you for listening to Champaign is Also a Band podcast. This is your name, which is where I'm supposed to say Neil, reminding you, great music is out there. Go find it where you live. Thank you.
Leave that in.
I think I don't need to do that again. That's perfect.
Do one more.
Oh,
okay.
But I threw it.